it was like otherworldly, you know? You're like, what? I can't believe this, you know? And you're holding your baby and you're just like, wow, this is something else. You know, it's ordinary in terms that it happens every day, all day long, but it really is extraordinary in like, wow, you know, I can't believe this just happened.
You're listening to the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast, where you'll gain the knowledge and confidence you need to erase the unknowns of pregnancy and birth and rock the newborn days like a boss. My name is Liesl Teen. I'm a fellow mom, labor and delivery nurse, and your host. Each week on this podcast, you'll hear a mix of birth stories, expert interviews, and other fun pregnancy and birth-related content. As a reminder, anything you hear on this podcast is not medical advice. Please see mommylabornurse.com/disclaimer for more details. And now let's get into this week's episode. So this week on the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast, I have Carly joining me. And guys, I know I say this like every single week, but I am so excited to share this one with you. Carly is a part of a 2-mom family, and she's actually now pregnant with her 3rd baby. Her and her wife have used the same sperm donor for all 3 of their babies, but the way Carly got pregnant was different all 3 times. It's a very interesting and very heartfelt story. Are you wondering what you need to do to stay on track during each week of your pregnancy? Not sure what you need to be learning or researching along the way? When you're pregnant, it can feel impossible to stay on top of all the new stuff going on with your body, your baby, and your bulging at the seams to-do list. Sign up for our free weekly pregnancy series to get tips, advice, and resources tailored to your exact week of pregnancy sent straight to your inbox every week. Sign up at mommylabornurse.com/I-am-pregnant to get your first email today. That's all one word, mommylabornurse.com/I-am-pregnant. See you in your inbox real soon. And now let's get into this week's episode. Hi, Carly. Welcome to the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast. Thanks so much for being here today with me.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Can you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Your family? Anything at all you want to share?
Okay. So I'm 35 and I live in Ottawa, Ontario, which is the capital of Canada for all of you. I know, right? For all of you who are trying to do the geography in your heads.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say that I probably could have gotten that right on a multiple choice, but I don't think I could have just like pulled that.
That's more like a phone a friend. Yeah, I hear that.
Yes, exactly.
Phone your Canadian friend.
Right.
And so I'm a high school special education teacher, and so is my wife. I've been married to my wonderful wife, Jess, for 7 years now, and we have 2 kids who are 2 boys, ages 2.5 and almost 5. And I'm currently pregnant 20-something weeks with our 3rd. Yeah, I feel like that's a 3rd baby thing.
Yeah,
you know?
Well, it was a 2nd baby thing for me, for sure. And I'm sure it only is more of a 3rd baby thing once you get to the 3rd one.
You're like, oh yeah, I am pregnant. Right, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Are you having another boy or do you not know?
We don't know. We're surprisers.
You're surprisers. I love it.
Yeah. And we feel we're dedicated to the cause. I find like people who want to be surprised, they just want to be surprised. Mm-hmm. And that's us, because there's nothing like the energy in the room. It's, it could give you goosebumps just thinking about, just that good juju. And sometimes that's what you really need right there at the end.
Oh yeah. You are not lying. Yes, for sure. Yeah. I know that feeling very, very well. So we are going to be talking about your first 2 births and then a little bit about your pregnancy as well. Usually what I have people do is kind of go back to the beginning and talk about, getting pregnant and how that process was. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different because you're in a same-sex marriage. So it's not the typical way that most people get pregnant.
Yeah, we definitely did not light any candles and put on any music.
Right. Oh.
Yeah, let's just say that. So we had decided shortly thereafter after we got married a few years, that we definitely wanted to have kids. And we anticipated that it's a long process for queers to have babies. So
Yeah.
we started, getting as much information as we could. In Ontario, where we live, we are covered for different procedures. The actual procedures themselves are covered, but the cost of the sperm is not covered.
Mm.
So we, started with our fertility doctor right away, and they do all the testing just to make sure that, your tubes are clear and everything looks good, because they don't want to go down that road if you're not prepped and ready, like if you have a blocked tube or something like that. And so that takes about 6 months of testing. And then they give you the all clear and you get to go shopping for a sperm donor. So
Wow.
yeah, we sort of sat down and poured a glass of wine and thought, like, let's do this,
Okay.
and we had this list. It was like a somewhat vague list of things that we wanted. I was like, I definitely want over 6 feet tall. I don't know why, I
Cool.
just have it in my head. And so I was like, must be 6 feet tall. And, just like a kind sounding individual. And you get so much background information. I always joke with my hetero friends that I know more about my donor than they probably know about their husband. Like
That's
we
so
get like a
funny.
40-page report, actually 40 pages. So
Wow.
you get everything. You get all the stats from both sides of the families dating back like 100 years as far as they can
Wow.
remember. And just like for congenital issues and different health concerns. So you get tons and tons of info. And so we just started going through and looking through and thinking, okay, we want him to be tall. We want him to be handsome. We want, him to be smart and funny and charismatic. Like we really just would love to go for a drink with him. Someone that you would want to
Yeah.
go for a drink, right?
Yeah.
And just like, shoot the breeze with.
Yeah.
And so we found someone who we were very, very interested in, and we bought it out. There were only 3 vials, but the clinic gave us lots of tips on if you like someone, you don't know how many times it's going to take. So buy a lot. So, we bought about $5,000 worth of sperm, which
Wow.
yeah, because we have to just, we needed backup and then backup and then backup because, you want multiple kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes they go into like what's called like retirement.
Oh.
So it's not always available in the future. So if you want subsequent children with the same donor, your best bet is to buy a lot in the
Like
beginning.
stock up on
Yeah.
that sperm.
Yeah, exactly. And so we bought everything he had. And then we shipped it to our clinic and we got started. And so I'm a pretty fertile person, thankfully. And so all we were really missing was the sperm. And it didn't take long. It didn't work on the first time. I have a bit of a longer cycle. And so the second time they put me on Clomid and it worked right away. And so, we couldn't believe it. We were like totally shocked. And we were excited, we were so, so excited. And so it just seemed like, even though it was such a short time of trying to conceive, just the whole process of from start to getting to there was like at least a year,
Yeah.
his appointments and stuff like that. And just the buildup it was a long time coming. So we were thrilled. And the pregnancy, it was easy. It was like
Nice.
I know, it was just like a really easygoing, time. And I taught the whole time. So we conceived in December. And so baby was due in August.
Okay.
And I knew I wanted a midwife right away. That like standard of care here in Canada is integrated into our healthcare system. So you either get to choose a midwife or an OB, and the government funds both for you.
Gotcha.
So midwives can deliver here, licensed midwives deliver at home in the hospital, or we have a freestanding birth center here in Ottawa. So that's the 3 different routes. And my wife's sister is an OB. So we have lots of good OB energy in our family. Always good to have someone to be able to call in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's a big perk for sure.
So I knew I wanted a midwife. I really resonated with like a more personal approach, and the appointments are longer, and they have aftercare here. So they come to your house after baby is born 3 times in the first week and then once a week for 6 weeks.
That's great.
So that for me, like I was sold.
Yeah.
So I knew pretty early on that I wanted an out of hospital birth. And so I started preparing because I knew that it was going to be a lot of work. And so I didn't take any birthing classes, but I started really reading a lot of unmedicated childbirth information. I just got into it. A lot of like anime.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to the birth hour and just trying to
All the things.
get as many things, as much information as I could to try and give me an idea about what it would be like.
Yeah, that's kind of the difficulty with your first pregnancy is you just don't know, what to expect. Like you can do all this research and have an idea in your head, but it's still that like, oh, I want to do research and research and research to just kind of like have it in my head of what it's possibly going to be like.
And you can really do all the research you want, but
Yep.
until you're there, you're not there.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the pregnancy was, like I said, it was really, a straightforward, no complications, nothing like that. And, we were getting towards the end and I had just figured, your first time mom, you're going to go over. And that's what my midwife says, like just prepare yourself to go to 42 weeks because that's just the easiest route. And if baby comes sooner, then we'll all be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
It was getting towards the end. And of course it's, it's uncomfortable and people are texting and calling and, this and that. And the appointments are getting more frequent, but, it was still very manageable. And so it was August, so it was hot. But that was okay. I wasn't teaching. I was on summer vacation. And so I was just chilling a lot, really. And I was about 39 weeks. And I was like, okay, I've still got a long time to go. Just settle in. And I was doing a lot of walking. So we had a French bulldog at the time and we walked her around and around and around and around. And, this one night, we were walking her and I walked up this great big hill. And I said at the top of the hill to my wife, I was like, it really feels like the baby's just going to fall out. It was just this feeling of this pressure.
Yeah.
And I think I was 39 weeks one day. And so, in the middle of the night, I just got up to go to the bathroom and I sat on the toilet and I just heard a pop. And I was like, is that what I think it is? And I heard a big gush into the toilet. And I just sort of sat there for a couple of seconds thinking to myself, I'm the only person on earth right now who knows that I'm in labor.
Oh, that's interesting. That's the first thought that popped into your head.
Yeah. I was like,
whoa,
I'm just going to revel in that for a minute. Right.
That's cool.
And so I just sort of sat there for a second and chilled out and was like, okay, this is how it starts. After, my little moment to myself, I called out to my wife and I said, babe, my water just broke. And I heard her, she has never moved quicker, So she jumped out of bed. And we always joke, if she went back on her Apple Watch, she would see her heart rate through the roof. And she comes running in and she was so excited. And, we were like, oh my God, and we were so excited. And so our midwife had told us, if your water breaks, put on a pad and go back to bed.
Yeah.
We just waited, and we just timed the contractions. And I just sort of did this little, I had a little loop. I was walking sort of around, sitting on my birth ball, bouncing and, waiting to see how things progress. And so my water broke. It was about 2 a.m. And then by 5, we had hit that 511 mark. And so we paged our midwife and she said, okay, well, it's 5 a.m. So I'm up for the day. So I'm going to come over. And so she came over and we adore this woman. This woman is just, she's everything, honestly. Everyone says their midwife's the best, but I know in my heart that actually mine's the best.
I actually have it.
The best.
That's great.
And so she came over, her name's Ola, and she, just sat with us and just hung out there for a couple of hours. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and my midwife suggested that maybe I try to lie down a little bit. And so, she didn't want me to be too tired, and she knew that I'd already been walking around quite a bit. And she said, the rule is that you got to try something for 3 contractions.
Yep.
And so, I got into bed, and it was just a no-go. It was like a non-starter. I was like, she wants me to relax right now? Like, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
And so it was I was like, I can't do this. And so I gave her the 3 contractions, and then I came back downstairs and I was like, nope, like that's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
She had this like sense that I was kind of wondering, where am I? When are we going to make the move to the birth center? That sort of thing. And so she offered to do a cervical check, which was the first that I'd had. And I hadn't had a membrane sweep or anything like that. So she did a cervical check, and she said, oh, you're 5 centimeters. So that's pretty good. That's active labor. Like, we can go. And so she called the birth center, like, fill up the tub, and, we're coming in. We got to the birth center and got into the tub and relaxed. And I just did my thing for a few hours. And it's sort of, I could feel things were changing a little bit. It was just like upping in intensity. And, my wife was doing like hip squeezes, and she was in the tub with me, but I was still really coping really well. And then I started to feel like my body was doing something different, and that really freaked me out. And it was the one thing that I had not prepared myself for, was the fetal ejection reflex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is, where your body just starts pushing on its own.
Yeah.
It just like knocked me over.
It's hard to prepare for that sort of thing, though, to be clear. And don't sell yourself short. You did a lot of prep, but that's one thing that's hard to prep for.
And I was sort of like, my midwife could totally tell my demeanor changed, and I was freaked out. That got me out of my zen pretty quick. And so my midwife was like, okay, well, come on out of the tub. We're going to move positions, change positions. We're going to go to the bathroom, empty your bladder, do some contractions on the toilet. We're going to change this up a little bit. She did another cervical check, and sure enough, I was in transition, and I was like, that typical transition mom moment, like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I was like, I cannot do this. I will not do this. This is not happening for me today, folks. It was, that transition there, it was rough. It gets really, really intense.
Yeah.
And like you said, you can prepare for a lot of things, but the intensity of it can feel very overpowering. And you really have to like give in, instead of like fight that intensity, you need to like work with that intensity.
Yeah.
And so at that point, she offered a little nitrous. And so I said, bring it on. And so she brought it on, and, I was holding that mask for dear life.
Yeah. Yep.
And I did that for a couple of contractions, and she said, okay, well, now you're getting a little bit too, almost like a little too loopy, maybe like you're not focused enough. And so, the nitrous took the edge off, where like it was still that intense, but you almost didn't care about it as much.
Exactly how I tell patients. That is the perfect way to describe it. Like, it's not probably going to hurt any less. You're just not really going to care as much about it.
Yeah. And so it really sort of tided me over until she was like, okay, now you're getting like a little lazy here. We're going to have to take that away. And I was like, okay, I guess so. And so, she did another check, and I was fully dilated, but I had a little cervical lip. And so she just did a little push back, little magical move there. And she said, okay, let's do it. My wife through this was like a rock star, and she is squeamish. She had no idea how she was going to do. And so she, though, was like she was like the best doula you could ever have, just like right there by my side. She, didn't miss a single contraction. And it was, she was amazing. And so she really wanted to announce the sex of the baby. And so my midwife said, okay, well, you're going to need to be right there then. And she said, I just don't know if I can do that. And then my midwife was joking, like, we're going to do a 4-handed catch, Jess. And my wife was like, whoa, definitely not doing that. But then, of course, when push came to shove, she was right there, right into
Oh,
it. And I
yeah.
didn't push for long. And then his head was out. And my midwife said to my wife, Jess, catch your baby. And so she reached down and she pulled
Oh,
up the baby out and she held him up. And we're all sort of looking at her to announce the sex. And she just was like totally gobsmacked.
like, I did it.
She was like a deer in headlights. Like I've never
Oh,
seen her like that before. And her mom was also there standing behind her. And finally, after about 30 seconds, her mom said, Jess, it's a boy. And we all just started to cry.
oh,
And so we were just like elated,
oh.
they put that baby on you and you're just like, you did it.
Yes.
You really feel like you have just climbed Mount Everest.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what? I can't believe this,
Yeah.
And you're holding your baby and you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
this is something else. It's ordinary in terms that it happens every day, all day long,
Yep.
but it really is extraordinary in like, wow, I
Yeah.
can't believe this just happened.
Yeah.
And so, we did delayed cord clamping and all that. And, he nursed right away. And, I had a 2nd-degree tear. And so they freeze it up and everything like that. And then they stitch it up. And obviously I delivered the placenta and that was being a bit stubborn. So they gave me a shot of like, I think it's oxytocin or
Mm-hmm.
Pitocin or
Mm-hmm.
something in your leg. And
Yeah.
then the placenta came out no problem. And with being at the birthing center, they only keep you 4 hours.
Yeah.
So
That's so nice.
they bring you a meal. So you get to choose. They have like a menu. So you choose a hot meal after and they bring it to you. And then, your midwife helps you get in the shower and just like process, take your first pee and everything.
Yeah.
And, helps you really get into that first little groove. And then they tell you what you need to know for the next 24 hours and then they send you home.
See you later. Yeah. No,
Bye.
I love it. No, that is exactly how birth centers typically in the US are too. You stay for like 4 or 6 hours and then, somebody does come to your house usually like the next day to check on baby, check on you.
It was amazing. So we got to the birth center around 10 o'clock. He was born at 5 p.m. and we were home in our beds, snuggling in at like 9:30.
Oh, that's
right?
So great.
And
that's
it was
so great.
like, we're looking at each other like, wow.
Yeah.
Like this is, like I said, it's extraordinary. It's just amazing. And I definitely had some baby blues. I think I started getting I noticed getting anxious when it was getting dark out. And every night at the same time, the sun would start setting and I would start dreading the night because he was up every 2 hours to nurse. And, you're that new mom. So you're like, get out your nursing pillow, right? You're changing the diaper, right? And so I wasn't really getting a ton of sleep. And that really played negatively on my mental health. And so that first 6 weeks, were a bit stormy. But then, that fog lifted and it was okay.
Nice.
We got into a really good groove. And here in Canada, you get 12 months of maternity leave. And so, we had a whole year to get to know one another and just get to, enter a new season as a family of 3.
Yeah, that's amazing. We have a long way to go here in the US with, a lot of things, but with maternity leave in particular. But yeah, a year, that is so great. All right, the sound of that baby crying means it's time for this week's segment of Birth It Up Babies. All right, this one says, just wanted to say thank you for your Birth It Up series. We did your natural birth class, but ended up having a C-section. I swear I knew that's what the doctor was going to say before he even said it, and it's because I knew exactly what to expect and what wasn't happening. I love that. Even though she did end up having a C-section, I love that, she felt like she knew what was coming and what to expect. We'd recommend these classes to anyone. I've seen it in the delivery room time and time again. Mamas that complete some kind of childbirth education before they're due have a more positive birth. So then why do less than 1/3 of all moms take a birth class? Probably because so many of the options out there are either way too expensive, super inconvenient, or just don't offer mamas really what they need. That's why I created the Birth It Up online birthing classes. With Birth It Up, you'll gain the in-depth knowledge and confidence you need to have a better birth from the comfort of your own home at a price point that can't be beat. Head on over to mommylabornurse.com/courses to find the birth class that's right for you. So let's go into the second go round. And I know that getting pregnant was a little bit different for you with this one. So let's talk about that. And then let's jump into that birth because I know that birth was also different.
Yes. And so, okay, well, we wanted to give, so our son's name is Knox. We knew we wanted to give Knox a sibling. So when my wife and I first got together, the idea was sort of that we would both carry.
Okay.
At one point. And so I went first, and the idea was that she would go second. And then towards, the last few months of my maternity leave, when we were coming up to like, okay, well, we're going to have to start getting back in to that mindset again. She had a moment where she was like, I actually have literally no interest in doing this. I really like my role in our family. I have no interest in being pregnant.
Yeah.
I have no interest in delivering a baby,
She's like, I saw that first time and I'm good. Yeah. I'm good, girl. Yeah. You got that.
And she was like, in the whole thing, you're feeding the baby from your boobs like all day. She was just like, no, thank you. But she really wanted an opportunity to feel the genetic connection. We decided to do reciprocal IVF, which is where one partner does an egg retrieval and then the other partner carries. So we got everything going for my wife for her egg retrieval. We started with our IVF, and this is no joke. This IVF thing is no joke.
Yeah.
And it was a process. It was a long process. We ended up with 15 eggs and 11 fertilized. And then they called us on day 5 and told us that they had all died but one. And we only had this one embryo.
Aww.
And we were heartbroken,
Yeah.
We were just heartbroken because it was so out of my wife's comfort zone to even do the egg retrieval.
Yeah.
And then, things started out looking really good. And then it was just sort of, it's like how it happens in, like hetero folks doing it the old fashioned way, like not every time works. Right.
Yeah.
And so even under perfect conditions. And so the doctors couldn't really explain what exactly had happened. They normally estimate an attrition rate of like 1/4 to 1/3. So you would end up with a third, and you want your embryos to get to a day 5. We were going to do a freeze all, meaning we would freeze anything we have, because then we have to prep my body to receive the embryo, which is its own process entirely, because trying to sync up your cycles is actually a nightmare.
Oh, I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, because you need to then sync up your cycles so that the retrieval matches with the transfer.
Yeah.
And they said it's basically impossible. So they did her retrieval in December, and we held on hope for our one little embryo. And, that little embryo made it through the ice age and was on ice, frozen there for a couple of months. And then I started doing the prep for the transfer, which is vaginal estrogen 3 times a day and progesterone shots in the bum once a day. And so, when they check my lining, they make sure everything's really looking really good. And they say, okay, we're ready to go. We're going to do it. And so, we had so much hope for this one little embryo, honestly. Like, we were terrified to even transfer it, because once you transfer it, that's it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, we did it, and we just waited, and I was just standing in the kitchen, probably 5 days after the transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this like mom sway, which I hadn't done in a really long time, where you sort of sway back and forth, like when you're
Uh-huh.
rocking like a new baby.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I looked at my wife and I was like, I'm pregnant. And she was like, what are you
Oh.
talking about? She's like, you're crazy. And I said, no. I said, honest to God, I said, I don't know. Something just happened and I just knew. And so she, got the test and I did it. And sure enough, I was pregnant. The pregnancy was really straightforward. And so I had my 38-week appointment. And my midwife said, listen, I'm going out of town this weekend. So if anything happens, who do we want as our backup midwife?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had, you meet all the different women in the practice. So you have an idea of who else is there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave, my next choices. And she said, okay. She said, but that's not going to happen. She said, babies wait for me all the time. And
famous last words.
I know, right? And I was only 38 weeks. And so we just said, okay, we'll meet next week. Mm-hmm. When we meet next week, we'll talk about it and see where we're at. On Monday, I came home and I tried to sit down, have something to eat. And I was like, I'm just not feeling good. Like I'm feeling really, really not good. And so I tried lying down, but I was super nauseous. I was feeling like really very ill. And I started having horrible diarrhea. I started vomiting. I was throwing up. Sure enough, I laid down and I heard that pop, that same pop, called the midwife. And sure enough, like by the end of our conversation, they picked up and they were like, boom, right away. There was no little intro like I got the time before. They were, I don't know if it was like all the pressure from being so sick and all of that, but I was already like in full blown labor. Had this moment where I was like, I need to go to the hospital. And we said, Julie, like, we're going to the hospital. So you meet us there. And she said, are you sure? And my wife was like, if Carly's asking to go to the hospital, that's what we're doing. We packed up the car and our friends came over and they were going to watch Knox overnight. And, we got out into the car and I was like, I can't get in this car right now. I was like, that feeling like you just can't sit down, like you just can't sit. And my wife looked at me like, you get in that freaking car. We are not having our baby in our driveway on the 3rd of December. Get in the car. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get in the car. And she was like, get in the car. And I was like, okay. So I got in the car and I was like, oh, here we go. And, I had this idea in my mind, like, I'm getting all the interventions. I've had friends who have had epidurals and then taken long naps. Like, this is what I was going for. I was like, I want the epidural nap. Yeah. And I said to my midwife, like, you tell them I'm coming for that epidural. You tell them, you get them ready. And so she was like, okay, you got it, And so we get there and, we get settled in the room. And, I got that nitrous until the anesthesiologist came in and my midwife was like, okay, well, we're just going to check you, get an idea. Like, let's see, going into this, like where we're at. And, I'd only been there like less than a half an hour. I just settled and she was like, okay, so you're 10 centimeters already. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure.
Wait, so had you gotten your epidural?
I had not, but the anesthesiologist was like, okay, well, we've got a short window of time here. Like, if you can sit still. And I was like, I literally looked at her. I was like, hold my drink, sis. Like, I'm done this.
I will sit as still as I need to. Yeah, trust me. If you like, you can do
I have hijacked my whole birth plan to get here for this epidural moment. Let's go. Yeah. And I didn't even feel it. I didn't feel any, like I was just like, let's do it. And so the epidural hit and it was lovely. So, I, tried to tell my midwife, like, okay, I'm having that epidural nap now. And she's like, Carly, you're 10 centimeters dilated. Like, this is not happening for you. Like, the epidural nap is not in your future. And so I was like, okay, fine. I'll just do it, And so the pushing, I already know how to push a baby out. And so I was like, okay, It's a little bit different because you have an epidural, so you don't have that same sensation.
Yeah.
But, they had it titrated pretty low. And so I could still feel what was happening, like obviously not at the same level as an unmedicated birth by any means, but I had a good idea of like when contractions were happening and what I needed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I started pushing, and it was taking forever. Like I pushed my first out in, under 30 minutes. And so I was like, this is taking so long. Like this is really taking some time. And I wasn't really switching positions because I had the epidural and I wasn't moving around or anything like that. And so we were just sort of like, okay, this is just part of the process. It's going to be a long pushing stage for you. And like, let's not, we're here, let's do it. And so we had talked about all my birth preferences. My wife was going to catch the baby just same as last time. I really wanted like a lotus picture with the placenta attached to the baby with the cord still attached. And so I had all my preferences all lined up, and my wife was, ready. She was right down there, ready to do the big pull out and the big reveal. And, I got the head out, and then I had this sensation like, this baby's not moving. Like,
oh no,
this baby's just not even moving. Like, I literally have a baby just like half out. And I could feel the dynamic in the room change completely. The midwife gave like my wife the hip check, basically. It was like, step aside. And so I didn't know exactly what was going on. And I think that, part of midwifery care and obstetrical care, good obstetrical care, is really keeping folks apprised of what's happening. Right. And that really makes a huge difference, knowing what's going on. Right. And so they were trying to just say like, okay, we're going to get this baby out, a little bit stuck, like, but we're going to do it, just push when you feel you have to. And they had changed the position on my bed. So they had my bed was like, my feet were almost above my head a little bit. Like I was on an incline or a decline.
Is what it's called.
Yeah. And they've got, like a little 5-step maneuver that they do. And the other midwife was there. She climbed up on top of me and was doing some external pressure. And, they were able to hook his shoulder out because he had his shoulder stuck, and they pulled him out and they put him right on my chest right away. But within I maybe had him like 2 to 3 seconds, and she could just see that he was just gray,
Yeah.
And so I saw her really quickly. She like squeezed the cord. He had a true knot in his cord.
Oh.
And she squeezed, the blood, and she brought it towards his body, and she cut the cord right away. And so I knew, okay, this is totally different. Right?
Yeah, something is not right. Yeah.
Something's not right. And she took him from me right away and brought him over to the table, the warming table. And, I could see she had like the little baby bag out and was resuscitating him. And we were just like, what's going on? And we didn't know the sex of the baby. We didn't know anything. We just were like, what's going on? And so, and it's protocol. They push the button and the whole NICU team comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd rather have them there if you need them. And so it took a couple minutes, but it wasn't long. It felt long, but it wasn't long. And he perked up.
Okay, good.
And so, they had him bagged, and they were giving him breaths and stuff like that. And after a couple of minutes, he perked up and he cried and stuff like that. And they brought him back over.
Yeah.
And even more so, than the first time, we were like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because it was completely drastically different from the first time.
Yeah. Smooth and steady the first, and like quite rocky for this one.
Yeah.
And short, start to finish water breaking to baby born, like even with the long pushing stage, like 3 hours maybe.
Yeah. Wow.
Compared to like 12 for the first.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I just couldn't wrap my head around what had happened,
Yeah.
I was like, this is how it all went down. Like, wow, this is really different.
Yeah.
And we have this baby, and here we are. It's a boy. Like, it wasn't that same automatic, like, elation.
Right.
I was sort of like shook,
Yeah.
So he's even bigger. He was 9 pounds, 3 ounces. And, the nurses there were like, are you sure you didn't have gestational diabetes? And I was like, I don't know. I passed the test,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he was hypoglycemic as well. So his blood sugar was low. So we had to stay in the hospital. And because he needed to be resuscitated, they made us, stay. And so it was a 24-hour period. And after going home, the first time so quickly, we just wanted out. We,
Oh, yeah.
the minute we got cleared, it was like 2 a.m. the following night. We were like, we're out of here.
At 2 a.m., you were like, I want to get discharged.
Yes. And she was like, you're sure you don't even want to stay the night? I was like,
no.
At this point, 30 minutes in my own bed of actual sleep would trump. I was like sharing a room. I was like, no, get me out of here.
Yeah.
So we peeled out of there at like 2 a.m., and we stopped at McDonald's and got some
nice
egg muffins.
Nice.
And like got home, and settled in and started to do this thing. And he was a super easygoing baby. And,
Good.
So another boy, and his name is Wilder. We weren't sure. We were wavering on a third, and we wanted to do, so we paid for our round of IVF. There's a process here in Ontario where the government will fund one round. Mm-hmm. They'll do one retrieval, but you have to go on the list. And so there's a long list, and it's about 12 to 18 months. And we just didn't feel like waiting that long for our second. We were like, let's do it. And so we paid out of pocket. We call him our little $1 million baby.
Love it.
Our little unicorn. But we were like, let's just go on the list, And so we'll see what happens here with this third. And by the time maybe they call our name, we'll be like, nah, we're good.
Yeah.
Or maybe we'll be like, let's do it.
Yeah.
So it was about, we went on the list October 2020, and they called us July 2021. So it was actually substantially shorter than, like, that's not that long at all.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that number come up on my phone, I was like, what the heck are these people doing calling me right now?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay. And, I called my wife and said, like, they're calling. Yeah. And it's basically like, if you're ready, you're ready. And if you're not, you go back to the bottom of the list.
Right.
So, we had a moment, and we're like, are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And we were both just like, okay, let's do it. And so we got on the list, and then, you start that whole egg retrieval process again.
Yeah.
And so we only had one vial left of sperm. We would have gone, I think, like another medicated IUI route if we had more sperm, but we knew we only had the one vial, and our person is now in retirement. So it was important to us that our kids all have the same donor. And so because I'm over 35 now, they call that the geriatric pregnancy.
Yeah.
And the chances of conceiving on your first try, even with medication at my age, was less than 10%. So we just said, like, let's not even risk it, you know, and we'll just do the IVF. And so we got settled into that whole thing. And, the retrieval was really hard, like very, very hard. My body responded through the roof, which, was a good problem to have in the end.
Yeah.
But like, it really took to the medication. And even on the very lowest dose, on the day I went in for my retrieval, my doctor said, your ovaries are touching. We call it like they're kissing.
Ah, interesting.
She's like, you have so many eggs.
Like they're full and
they're totally full, and they're actually touching inside your body. So that was like, and it's uncomfortable for sure. And on the retrieval, they retrieved 37 eggs, which they were just like, couldn't believe,
Yeah.
And so I had hoped to do a fresh transfer, meaning you wait the 5 days and then they put a day 5 embryo back in. But because my body had overstimulated, they really want your body to like chill out before
Yeah, that
you
makes
do the
sense.
transfer, because then if you get pregnant, your hormones go obviously through the roof. And I had developed ovarian OHSS, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. And so pregnancy hormones really exacerbate that. So they said, we can't really take any chances. And so I cooled off a little bit and waited 2 months, maybe a cycle and a half or whatever. And then, we got, back into it again. And so the 37 eggs were retrieved and 35 were mature and 13 formed into embryos.
I mean, that's good. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. Yeah. And so I was like, and we only want one more. And so we couldn't believe it, right? We hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
And so we, when the time came, we put our embryo back in there, and a few days passed and I woke up feeling, I was like, I have COVID, there's no escaping it. I was like, I got kids coughing in my face, 2 COVID babies coughing in my face all day long. And, my throat was sore and this and that. And so I said, I've got COVID and I'm pregnant. And my wife's like, Carly, come on. And I was like, come on, give me those tests. And so, I did the nose swab and that came up right away, COVID. And then I peed on the stick and that came up right away.
Oh pregnant. My God.
And so I was like, I am positive on all fronts here.
That's great. That's great.
And those tests, they look oddly similar.
They do. I've seen memes because of that, because you're exactly right. It's and I've seen, I think it was the Holder and his family did a video on how your thought process when you take a COVID swab is kind of the same when you're taking a pregnancy test. If you're
a little bit nervous,
you're a little bit nervous. You're like, this is just going to change things. And it's just so funny.
Yeah. And so positive on all fronts. And, obviously we were excited. So we were a little bit worried. The doctors were like, there's nothing to really do. Yeah. Try to not get a fever, keep the fever down with Tylenol. Yeah. And luckily it was really mild. So I actually had COVID the same time y'all had COVID, because I was watching your stories and I was like, oh, we got COVID at the same time.
Yeah. It's not fun. Yeah. Yeah.
And, so that was in February.
It was February, so, early February.
Yeah, early February. And so now I'm 22 weeks along, and baby's due October 30th, and we're so excited.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much. That was a beautiful story of both births and getting pregnant with this third one. Can you share your social media? Do you have a page that if people want to kind of just connect with you?
Yeah. So it's just my first and last name. First name is Carly, Carly, and then _Hawke, HAWKE. My page is private, but you're more than welcome, folks. If you want a message, reach out. Any queers trying to get pregnant, any non-queers who are doing the IVF thing too. I feel like we've done the full gambit here of fertility. So, happy to help anybody else on their journey.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Carly. It was a pleasure. All right, guys, that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and letting me be a part of your motherhood journey. It is truly an honor. If you like what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And I love hearing what you guys think of the podcast. So if you're liking what you hear or you have a suggestion, I'd be so grateful if you'd go ahead and leave me a review wherever you're listening to help more mamas just like you find the show. What do you think? Are you starting to feel a little more confident about your pregnancy and birth? Well, if you want more, be sure to head on over to mommylabornurse.com/podcast for today's show notes and a library of episodes so you can keep getting educated before your upcoming birth. And while you're over there, be sure to check out the blog and learn about our online birth classes. Find it all and more over at mommylabornurse.com/podcast. See you next week, same time, same place.